hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Average Superstar TV. I'm your host, Lauren Lepre, and welcome to episode number 98. And everybody who knows when this podcast is largely, wrestling, film, TV, movies, history, but I am known to just kind of go wherever I want. And this week we are back in. It's been a minute. I'll call it the mental health department. So I got a very special guest. For the record, I've known this human about 25 years now. Back when we were quite young, not that we're old. We're just, old. We're not as young, but all the way back to the age of Hot Topic. We were working there for a few extra dollars and just having a good time. But this week is, like I said, we're focusing on mental health. So let me just give my guest her background. Sarah is a licensed professional counselor, national certified counselor, and DBT therapist in the private practice based in Philadelphia. Based all over Pennsylvania. With over 20 years of experience in this film, she is nationally recognized for her work with borderline personality disorder. Sarah has been featured in counseling in Today, HuffPost, Shape Magazine, and other national outlets for her insight into mental health. So with that, I welcome my guest, Sarah Ween. Did I say it right?
Yeah, you did great.
Okay. All right, cool.
And for the record, I had a moment where I was like, holy shit, has it really been 25 years? Yes.
Either that was either 2000 or 2021. I remember because I always had a second job on top of everything I was doing. And I always picked a throwaway job. Like you're not really working. It's hanging out at the mall.
Yeah, that's exactly. I wanted to have a fun job before I started. Just something I didn't have to think about. Yeah, you nailed it. So, but yeah, at the moment there, I was like, holy shit.
Particularly this department, what you heavily specialize in. I also know you deal with that and people that have anxiety and PTSD. So we'll cover all three. But let me just start from the top. What made you even want to, deal with something like this? What made you want to help people?
So as far as like BPD, like the thing that really, and years ago, I thought, oh my gosh, I don't think I could do this. And then over the years, I became very good at working with these people. And I think when we look at people with BPD, these are highly sensitive people, right? So they're feeling more intensely. Their emotions last a hell of a lot longer than people that aren't highly sensitive. And I can relate to that, and like the pop culture term, like empath, like that's kind of how I would identify myself. So I think that that's kind of what enabled me to be able to really connect with these people, right? And I like a challenge. And being that BPD is a disorder that people typically don't want to touch, and there's a lot of stigma and a lot of like misunderstanding, that kind of was right up my alley. And then when I started working with these people, and after I had, the countless training or what have you, I was like, damn, I'm pretty good at this. And so it has become a thing, and I really, really enjoy it. But yeah, it's been years and years in the making because kind of like in all the therapy world, you kind of pick and choose where you're drawn and where you're needed and the kind of people that you really love and to work with and passionate about. And that's kind of how I got to where I am today as far as my expertise.
Gotcha. Awesome. So, and then you go to school for that. And how do you even cast out the wheel in clients like this? Like how, and then obviously people talk. So it's like, it's like thumbs up, thumbs down, but you're doing very good. You're having quite, so how does the word spread? Like, oh, we got the right person for you.
It's a good question. You had asked me initially, what was your first part of the question though, Lauren? You said,
how do you even get out there to, start saying, hey, come talk to me. I'm the new girl. And then, not saying you're casting a line out, trying to get customers, patients, and then it spreads. So like, just looking for your little bit of how that happened for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, for what I do, and I'm a dialectical behavior therapist. So what that means is, I have my master's degree, I've got my license, and then I, on top of that, went for extensive training through the behavioral tech, which they are the gurus for dialectical behavior therapy, and they were founded by the woman that founded DBT. So I was fortunate enough to get enrolled with them. And after having this intensive training, and you have to do all these different things. So it's not like I can just hang out a shingle and say I'm doing this DBT work, because there's a lot of different shit that goes into it. So as far as letting people know, right? I've spent a lot of time fine tuning how to reach my ideal people, right? Because I only work with the people I find to be ideal clients, in that people that I feel I can help, and people, when they come to me, they feel like I'm their person, right? So a lot of it is very targeted marketing, because when people look for me, or when they're looking for DBT, right? Because a lot of times people with borderline personality, they've done their homework, because they've done all kinds of different treatment and nothing's worked, right? So they're kind of like at their last ditch effort, like, God damn, something needs to work. Why am I doing all these things and I'm still fucking miserable, right? So people typically look up DBT therapy, right? And they will, a lot of times they might be bombarded with different things. Now, some people think that they're doing DBT and they're not, right? Like, some people just take bits and pieces of it, and they tell, they're using different pieces of it. So while they're not full-blown DBT therapists, they might be DBT friendly, right? So they're only taking little pieces.
Yeah.
Which is better than nothing for people, right? And it's just not the full-blown thing. So what has happened was, I just felt that there was this need to have this comprehensive, adherent treatment the way it's intended to be done, right? And
so before we go into the treatment,
right.
could you just explain for the average viewer who may have heard of this, like, what is the proper definition of borderline personality disorder?
Okay, so like I'm kind of not going to really use psycho words.
Okay.
Not people.
Be real. It's a podcast.
Yeah, I think it's important, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing: when we talk about borderline personality disorder, BPD, like, the reality is, it's a mental health disorder that impacts how someone experiences emotions, experiences relationship, identity, how someone thinks and behaves, right? So clinically, we talk about 5 patterns of dysregulation. So we look at emotion dysregulation, we look at impulsive and self-destructive behavior. We talk about unstable and chaotic relationships. We talk about this extremes in thinking, or like this black and white thinking. And on top of that, they also have this shaky and constantly shifting sense of self, right? The reality is, that's the clinical stuff. What it feels like, the rawness of living with it. So people that live with this, what it's like is that their emotions are constantly hijacking them, right? So they're feeling this, their emotions are so intense, and they hit hard, they hit fast. It's like out of nowhere, like a fucking ton of bricks, 0 to 100, right? When experiencing like negative, painful emotions, right, it literally hurts. Okay. So the way I explain this is I quote the founder of DBT, Marcia. She's like my home girl. I love her. Right. So like, she'll say, what she said was, borderline individuals are the psychological equivalent to 3rd-degree burn patients. Like, there's like simply no emotional skin. Right. So because the emotional pain is so intense, they'll literally do anything to make that pain stop. So in other words, like, people with BPD often become what I'd call like emotion phobic. Like, in other words, they'll do anything possible to not have to feel devastating emotional pain, right? So what happens is, something will happen that they're experiencing something painful, a negative, painful emotion, right? And that's when the impulsivity comes. That's when the life-threatening, like the cutting, the suicidal threats, the excessive substance use, the damaging, destroying.
So is it kind of like tag you're in, like they're trying to get anybody to pay attention to them? No.
Perhaps, right? Okay. More often than not, though, Lauren, it's almost like they're not even thinking about that shit. They're just thinking about, this hurts so fucking bad, I will do anything to make it stop, right? And so that's where a lot of people might end up cutting themselves. Some people might end up doing, they might try to problem solve their emotions by going on spending sprees, like money they don't have, right? Anything to kind of make that pain go away, right? So what we found is that people will often say, I'll say, well, what happened after you cut yourself? Or what happened after you did these things? And they'll say, oh, nothing, it wasn't worth it. I'm like, really? Like, because if you step back and you think about it, there's this split second of relief. The endorphins are happening. They're not realizing that. They're just knowing that cutting themselves or going out and sleeping with every guy in the bar, it's doing something, right? And that something is enough.
So they don't want to be alone in their mind. Is that a big thing?
It's this like, great question. It's like the idea of being alone or being rejected, right? It's like this perceived, I'm not good enough. It's this perceived, they're so desperate to be accepted and to be loved, right? That they will do anything, right? So that way, when someone does give them that attention, when they are in this relationship, a lot of times what they'll do, right? And not they're not consciously thinking this, right? So like they'll like say things like, they'll be like, I just don't believe that this person wants to be my friend, or I cannot believe this guy like actually wants to date me. And what they'll do is they'll start testing, right? Because it's too good to be true. It's like, so that's when like you see this pushing and like, or right, they'll keep testing and testing and testing. And of course, most people find that obnoxious. Like and I'm not,
you know, and they get rid of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like no one's denying that. You know what I mean?
Where does it like even come from?
So what I believe and what I've been taught is that there's like a psychosocial piece, okay? Right. A biopsychosocial piece. What does that look like? Okay. So if you were to look at highly emotional sensitivity, okay, kind of like what I said, like at the beginning, like I feel things deeply, you know. I was the kid that would cry if someone said something to me that I felt was hurtful, right? I would ruminate on something that someone like looked at me the wrong way as a kid, right? And it would hurt. That's the painful piece, right? So what?
All right, copy and paste. That came to me, but I also think you could send that right down the street to everybody in some way, shape, or form, right? So,
okay. But here's the piece, though, right? So like the emotional sensitivity is biologically based. It has been found that emotional vulnerability, that just some people are just born that way, right? So it's the idea that they can subtly detect, like, kind of like an empath, if you will, right? Like I can pick up on other people's stuff like nobody's business. Like I can feel it, right? People with BPD can too. When they're experiencing an emotion, the emotions last a long time. They hit you like a ton of bricks, right? Now, people are like, yeah. Well, just like you said, well, can't they just, you know, ignore it? Can't they just whatever, right? And the way I describe this to people is imagine you were born hard of hearing or you were deaf, okay? And you just couldn't hear, right? When telling someone that has highly emotional sensitivity, they need to just brush it off. It's no big deal. That's like telling someone who's deaf they're not trying hard enough to hear. Okay.
Okay. I like that analogy. I'll respect that. Yeah.
I hope that makes it a little like.
No. That was a great way of explaining it. Sure.
And by the way, like that doesn't mean that absolves people from their behavior, right? That's just kind of giving, like, that's the biological piece, right? And
I always said with a lot of stuff between people, you know, claim to have anxiety, or I know I'm jumping ship, or they have depression, and it's like they have the time to tell you, they have the time to post to tell you that they have a problem, but they don't have the energy to go fix it, or they're constantly telling you they have a problem, but when the concert time comes or a convention time, there are a million pictures of like, what is this, a light switch? Like it just seems, so I understand, because I'm trying to watch my wording here, that does exist, but where's this crowd is really needs to be treated versus you need to put your big boy pants on and get out, like when no one has time for this, and you're making the people that have the real problems look softer, even, you know, like, you know what I mean? So,
well, let me just finish like this, like BPD soup, like how it happens, right? Because that's just that's just like the biological piece, right? So like the social piece, right? The reason I turned out non-borderline, right, and I'm just going there, right, is I firmly believe it's because I had a family that embraced this, right? Like, in other words, you know, there are people that are highly sensitive to emotions, right? And then this doesn't happen to them, right? So why is it that some people end up with borderline personality and others don't? So imagine, so you take this kid, okay, or a young person, or let's say it's an adult that is in a relationship and they're in like some sort of abusive relationship, or they're neglect, whatever. Okay. And you take that biological sensitivity, right? And then that person is in an environment that's highly, highly, highly chronically and consistently invalidating. So what does that mean? That's basically saying, what the fuck is wrong with you? Why are you acting like this? So-and-so over there doesn't give a shit. Why do you have to act like this, right? Or can't you be more like your sister? Can't you be like more like your brother? Why can't you just suck it up, right? Now, right? This is not just one time, because we all invalidate sometimes. That's just how we are. We're human beings, right?
okay.
But like it's this consistent messaging from the environment, like social environments, family, friends, school, whatever, right? That's that is communicating to these people, there is something inherently fucking wrong with you because you can't turn that switch off and just not be highly sensitive anymore, right? So again, if you go back to that metaphor, like someone's deaf, you can't tell them to just fucking listen harder. You know what I mean? A lot of times families and environments, they're not purposely trying to be like this. They're not purposely trying to be like, well, let's like really mess up our kid. Like that's not what's happening. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So like what happens is it's this like transaction, right? So it actually, this invalidation from like the social environment, actually what happens reinforces that behavioral discontrol, right? So the example I often give, and I'm sure you've been there, we've all been there, where we've been in a store, let's say we're grocery shopping, whatever, and there's a mother or a dad, whomever, is with a little child, right? And that child's really tired. We all know like that the kid's had it, right? The mother's exhausted. And the kid starts begging for like, I want this. It's time to go. Like, Mommy, I want to leave. I can't, give me this toy, all this stuff, right? And the mom's just trying to keep it together, right? And then all of a sudden she's had it and she's like, oh my God, fine. Let's go. Now are you happy? Right? That's just reinforcing that out of control behavior. Do you see what I'm saying?
So you're basically saying the parents got to be a parent. Like the kid does not run the ship. I do. Because if you're allowing the kid to win, then they're onto a path of like, well, that's all I got to do is just keep being loud and obnoxious till I get my way.
It's creating this behavioral pattern that's reinforceable.
Right.
So let's say.
Like getting thrown off the horse. You're supposed to get back on the horse. Otherwise, the horse just knows to throw you every time. And that's, you know, that's where that saying came from.
Yeah. I mean, you
have to get back on the horse or the horse isn't going to respect you. So the horse realizes like, you're the boss and you could get, you know, riding whenever, you know, get your ride whenever you want. That's where that saying came from.
You're absolutely right. So let me put that in like adult terms, right? With like someone with BPD, right?
Okay.
Let's say two people are dating, right? The girl's like, oh my gosh, I had a great time, yada, yada, yada. Like they've been dating for a while. She starts feeling like something might be going on, like, oh my gosh, like I just don't feel like you supported me or whatever it is. She starts feeling whatever. And the boyfriend, I'm just going there with the boyfriend because it's typically the women that are that have BPD. So
of course, you guys are all weirdos. That's go on. No, sorry. Joke, everyone.
It's okay. So here's the thing, right? So so the guy finally has it, and he's, he didn't get, he's not giving her whatever it is, right? And again, this is perceived rejection. Sometimes people have no idea they're invalidating someone. So let's just say that the girl feels brushed off, feels invalidated, whatever. And because she is feeling so fucking deeply, like, oh my God, he's not going to want to be with me anymore. Like, again, it's like jump into the worst case scenario, right? It's not like, oh, this person might be tired, or my boyfriend, he's annoyed. It's, oh my God, he's annoyed. Now he's going to leave me. Right. So what happens is, again, jumping to the extreme behavior because the person doesn't want to feel the negative stuff. Right. So that's when, okay, maybe there might be a suicidal threat. Maybe she goes into the bathroom and cuts herself with a razor blade. And then what happens? What happens is the boyfriend comes running in, saves her, sees the thing, and gives her that whatever she was trying to get in the first place. Yeah. Now that boyfriend just reinforced that, just made it more likely that she's going to respond in the same way next time.
Yeah. So it's a lot of copy and paste in a way. Like they're in a way are they trying to learn you, like learn you and what makes you tick? Like between that and what is a psychopath? Like what's the difference there?
Well, I can absolutely give you the difference. Like,
okay. But they're similar traits, though, right? In areas, at least.
On the surface, I can see why people think that. Truly, right?
Okay.
The difference is people that are psychopaths, they can't feel. Like there's no empathy. There's no, and people with borderline personality, they feel so deeply, right? So it's like they're almost feeling they're feeling too much. They're feeling all this too much, right? So part of what I do. Okay. And again, it's to help them build that emotional skin and learn effectively how to navigate shit. So they're not cutting themselves. So they're not doing all these things because frankly, that's horrible for everybody. No one wants to deal with it. Right. And of course it's just pushing those people away.
But you would consider someone with borderline personality, someone who's could not get enough attention, right?
I don't know if I would necessarily say that.
Okay. But they more like to try to poke a bear. Like if you say like, I got to be somewhere at 5 o'clock and it's so important. And then like, it's 5 o'clock and they're texting you just to see if you'll answer them. Like just to see like, oh, this is an important moment for them. Let me see if I could draw attention to me. Is that could does that fall under that? Like it gets a test to see if.
Somewhat. Yes. And I can see why you would think that. Like, truly, and that makes.
I've had similarities between close guy friends. I've also had some girl like I would actually the next time tell them the next time it's important, but it's really not. And I would get the call and I'd be like, wow, like they're just trying to see if they could get that extra, like, will he pay attention? And they're usually fired very quickly after that.
And I
don't do that to someone else. Like so I don't expect them to do that to me. You tell them the time not to bother you for a reason.
And right, you have to understand that's skillful behavior. Like when you're saying like, if someone says to you, "Hey, Lauren, I can't talk until later," right?
Yeah.
You have the skill set to be like, "All right, like I can just wait," right? Or if something urgent came up, you would know how to communicate that to the person. Like say, hey, like I have something that's really important. I need to run by you. Right. So you have that effect. You have that skillful behavior. Right. So a lot of times, like it might sound incredibly obvious, but not everyone knows this shit. Right. Especially if you grew up in an environment where like you're constantly brushed off. Right. So part of it's skill, like truly, a lot of it's like you can't be skillful if you've never been taught, right? So it's kind of like, I relate this to teachers sometimes, right? My daughter's in high school, right? There are times when I've had these discussions with people where it's like, okay, well, so-and-so needs to do their homework. Okay, they need to get their grades up. Okay, well, this person, she needs to just, do these things and make sure she's on time and turn in the homework assignments. Okay, well, yeah, you're telling me the things that need to happen, but how is she going to make those things happen? Do you know what I'm saying? So like instructing someone to calm down. First of all, that never helps. Do not ever tell somebody to just calm down, because it just doesn't work and it's just going to backfire. If you're telling someone, hey, you need to stop being so sensitive, without telling them or instructing them how, okay, growing up, if they never learned how, they're not going to know how, okay, especially if they've been dismissed their whole life, right? So it's a complicated shitstorm. Like, this is not an easy disorder, because their behavior can rub people the wrong way. I totally get that.
Is this something that's genetically passed on? If someone knows they have it and they have a child, do they know it's going to them, or could it skip the generation?
It's more of the transaction or the interaction, right? So there's a biological piece, like that high sensitivity, right? Like, for me with high sensitivity, it is so clear. My daughter's highly sensitive. I am. I know my mom is, and I knew my grandma was too. Like, it is so crystal clear. Okay.
Okay.
And again, I was fortunate enough that my parents really embraced this. Now, of course, like, it can be tiresome when you have a kid per se that's really feeling all the time, right? It's hard, right? And yet my parents didn't communicate to me over and over and over, Sarah, there's something fucking wrong with you because you're feeling too sad. Or, why are you so angry at that? The reality is, the people that are feeling these things have very valid reasons for feeling those things. It just so happens that some people don't have that sensitivity part, and they can just let it slide, right? But that's not something that we just instruct them to not do.
So let me jump in here. So you're doing a good job explaining this stuff, but like, you came up with, well, I don't say you came up with, but like, you have a treatment where everybody comes to you, and you seem, how's that go about? Like, what makes it different?
Okay, so dialectical behavior therapy is a complex treatment for complex people. Okay. What sets it apart, right? So I'm going to give you the quick summary of what it is. So what it is, it's research backed. It's an effective treatment for people who have difficulty controlling their emotions and behaviors. It aims at replacing problem behaviors with skillful ones. Okay. It helps people learn to experience a range of emotions without necessarily acting on them, right? And helps people navigate relationships within their environment. We're not telling the environment they need to change. No. It's not like we're telling everyone that they can't say certain, that's not what it's about. This is about, how to help people within their environment navigate relationships. And it also helps people create this life that's worth living and not just existing in misery, because no one wants that, right?
Of course.
When people hear about DBT, often people are like, what the fuck does dialectical mean? Okay. And very, very simply put, what it means is two very opposite sounding ideas can be true at the exact same time. And when considered together, okay, it can create this whole new truth, a whole new way of viewing a situation. Okay. So in other words, there's always more than one way to think about a situation, right? This can be hard, especially when things seem so crystal clear that there's one right way and one wrong way to think. Okay. So I often will tell people this. I use a personal example. Okay. I pull from my life. And this is where DBT is a little bit different, because we are encouraged to share with people how we use this shit in our own lives, right? Because for us to stand back here and be like this high and mighty, we know it all.
Yeah.
That's just not cutting it,
like,
right?
You're talking down to them. No one likes that. Yeah.
No one, right?
In any situation. Yeah.
So one of the examples I use, again, my daughter's 16, right? Typical 16-year-old girl, right? Very simple dialectical viewpoint here. I will often say to her, Linnea, I love you so much, and you are really pissing me off. You see how those two things can be true at the same time, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because people with BPD, they think in these extremes, right? Like, if I would say something like, it might be, oh my God, well, that person doesn't love me because they're angry. That's not true. Yeah. You can be angry with someone and still love them, right?
Yes.
a metaphor I like to use is let's say, and this one I pulled from somewhere else. I wish I could have created it because I think it's phenomenal. But let's say you and those safari parks like at Disney World or
Sure.
okay. So like let's say like you and somebody else, they're at this like safari park, they're in the car or whatever, and they're looking at all the trees and the animals, and it's all really beautiful. And like you just stop at the car, you both get out. Like, oh, there's some really kick-ass trees down there. Let's go take some pictures, right? And then all of a sudden, this fucking tiger comes out of nowhere, chases down your friend, and eats your friend. Okay, is this good or bad?
Clearly bad, right? Unless you didn't care about your friend.
No. The question is, it makes a difference who's deciding, right? So for you, bad. For your friend, bad. For the tiger,
you need to eat.
You got it.
Yeah, gotcha.
Right. So that's what dialectical means. It's looking at all different sides. Again, that's not being dialectical.
Good analogy. I like that. Good.
Yeah.
Good
Thank you. It doesn't mean go be an asshole.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just being able to see that.
It's the same thing with like a war, right? No matter how bad it looks like, everybody on each side thinks they're the good guy, you know?
Mm-hmm.
They got media that tell they're the good guy, but like reality, all war is bad, but someone benefits. That's why they're having a war.
Yeah. You absolutely got it.
Yep.
So that's kind of like what it is, right? So what I do, right?
Yeah.
So remember how I said like what I do is like the adherent piece. Some people just take bits and pieces. So like in order for it to be legit, full, like the research back this, there's several pieces, right? So part of that is there needs to be weekly therapy. There needs to be weekly skills training. That's a whole separate thing. There needs to be phone coaching. Okay. So often clients will text me and call me, right? Because the idea here is you need to get a hold of me before you do the thing, whatever the thing is. Okay. So like, you know what I mean? Oh my God, I'm going to blow up this guy's phone with all these rage texts because I'm so fucking pissed. I'm going to let him have it. You got to hold me before you do the thing, because it's one thing for us to learn and talk about this shit in session. It's a whole other ball game when you can learn and implement it in real life. Right. Mm-hmm. And then the last piece is I'm part of a consult team. So that means that I meet with people regularly who also work with people that have BPD, because it's hard work. We need to be able to support one another. So without those 4 pieces, and without following with all those, I mean, there's a whole scheduling and all this stuff, but like those are the 4 pieces, right? And without those, it's not DBT.
All right. Word. Yeah. And I know you said that you also deal with PTSD and anxiety too. They're like your main 3.
Yeah.
How do you? And is that like something you choose? Are you more choosy, or just anybody could go? Like, how do people get a hold of you for that, for anything?
So, what's that?
Besides the website, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, no, so what happens is anyone that wants to work with me, I make sure that we do a consult first. It's free. And the idea behind that is to make sure it's a good fit. Okay. So it needs to be that, hey, can I help this person with what they're looking for? And can that person work with me? Because the reality is, if they can't stand the sound of my voice, let's just say, it's not going to work. Like, you need to shop around and make sure it's a good fit, right? Mm-hmm. So I am so clear from the get-go when people find me what to expect, right? So I'm so fully transparent with what to expect, like once they find me, right? And then again, it needs to be a good fit, and I'm well versed with being able to identify that. So that's how they get a hold of me. On my website, like if I have openings, like I'll have a consult schedule like open, so that way people can schedule.
Would you say like borderline, psychopath, all that stuff, would you say this is something that happened as time went on, or do you think this has always existed? And we just because, 20th century medicine, stuff gets diagnosed all the time, but like things could be traced back forever and ever. Do you think it has something to do with just genetics? Do you think it's the horrible foods we eat here in America? Like, what sets all this off?
Well, I definitely think like symptoms can be exacerbated by not taking care of a body. Like I'm fully, I think that's huge, right?
Yeah.
The one thing I do know about BPD, like I know that you asked me about other things, but what I do know about that is it is not an island. And what I mean by that is this: the dysfunction only comes out in the context of relationships, right? So let's say someone has schizophrenia, right?
Okay.
They're on a deserted island. You could observe them and their symptoms would still be there. Like you might see them talking to themselves. You might see them like doing all these things, right? Someone with BPD, you put them on a deserted island, you'd be like, what? There's nothing wrong with this person. Like it only comes out in relationships. So when you ask me like, where, has this been something that's always been there?
Yeah.
It's been around for a long time. I would assume, and obviously I don't know the dates or whatever, but I would assume that any kind when society started happening, right, there was going to be some things happening because there would be that person that acted like the quote crazy person. And don't misunderstand me, because we all do crazy shit, right?
Yeah.
Just ask the vacuum cleaner that I had out in pieces in my yard like a couple years ago. Like we all do stupid shit, right? And yet, it's a pattern of stuff. And I'd be willing to bet that this kind of stuff has been around for years and years and years.
Got you. Do you think America is do you think that they're advertising and literally trying to get in people's heads with the late night commercials? Like, are you hot? Does your eye hurt? Are you sad? You having trouble sleeping at night? Do you think it's kind of more or less, don't buy drugs on the street, go to CVS, we got you hooked up so they could get the tax money? You think we charge people up and try to get in their head to say we are just a huge sick country? And do you think we're you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're asking. And I think on one hand, there's a personal accountability that needs to, because not everyone that sees a commercial is going to be like, damn, that's me. I'm going to run and go buy these things. Right. I think there's people that are more susceptible to that. Right. Does it help that we have drug commercials on all the time? Probably not. I mean, I don't think so. Again, this is just
it's for everybody listening here. The reason I bring that up is New Zealand and America is the only place that you could advertise like that actually on television. All the other countries are like, no. And I think they're pulling that out of sight, out of mind. Maybe they kind of, but that doesn't mean there's no problems anywhere. But it's kind of also something that blew me out of the water. I don't have statistics in front of me, but those third world countries where people are extremely poor and they don't know where they're eating from day to day. They are just trying to find food to feed their family, and when they get food in their body for the day, success. We'll worry about tomorrow when tomorrow gets here. These people don't have literally like anything that we have in America, because I don't think they have time. I think they just got to worry about getting through the day and eating. So I think, I don't know, I do believe a lot of us sitting around come up with stuff. I also believe social media, when you're constantly like, look at the attention this one's getting, or particularly body stuff, like, oh, she looks way better, he looks way better, you're watching a movie, you wish you could live in in Pandora and freaking at Avatar. Like, I just think, I wonder with less technology and stuff, like, it's just, will we more happier?
I mean, I think that there's validity in when you have not, when you are worried about getting through the day with food.
Yeah.
I think there's like definitely validity to that, right? I think it's important that, one of the things I truly believe this, right? That I think every single person, right, wants to be happy. I think people want to improve. That does not mean that they don't need to try harder, right? Because they do, right? Because that's the personal accountability. And just because we didn't cause our problems, that doesn't mean that we are absolved from solving them ourselves, right? So like, just because, let's say, something horrible happened to me like years and years ago, that doesn't mean like I'm like, I don't have to do anything about it. That's not how it works, right?
Right.
What works is like, if we want change, we have to be the ones that do it, even if we're not the ones that caused it. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
You're right. And also the piggyback off that, who doesn't have a story, like, or multiple stories? Like, that's part of our time here on earth. Like, there's a time to be happy, there's a time to weep, there's time of mourn, like all that, and there's time for success. So like, that's the beautiful journey of being alive, and I embrace all of it. I'm not happy when things obviously don't go my way. Who is? But when it happens, I'm like, all right, that happened. How am I going to deal with that to get back on my path? And in my case, I can't take too long to sit there and stop, because life's going to move on. I can't, that's just, but everybody's mind is different. So I always say, like, I don't have any of this stuff. All right. So I can just look at someone and be like, stop it, put your big boy pants on and go. But other areas of my life where I'm like, I wish I could do this. So like, maybe they could just be like, dude, I did it. You couldn't do that. So I got to watch, like, they might have a superpower I don't. So I always watch how I word things, and like, how I puff my chest out, because in this area I'm great, in this area I'm not. So watch it,
Yeah. Just be careful that you don't. I mean, obviously, it's one of those things. It's so tempting to just be like, just fucking do the thing. Just do it. Stop it. Yeah. Just gotta caution you, because it's not gonna work. I haven't heard somebody.
You're right. I don't know really, honestly, anyone who you yell at that does it, unless they're that very small percentage that gets so angry at you. Like, watch, I'm gonna even out and surpass you, and you motivated me. But that doesn't work. That's not gonna work on a large level at all. Yeah. So I know what you're saying there. Madness, kid.
You got it.
Life was easier when we were at Hot Topic.
Fucking 20 years. What happened?
441. Oh.
So, can I plug?
Go for it, kiddo, please.
All right. So if anyone out there wants to get a hold of me or whatever, just check out my website, and that's sarahweandlpc.com, right? I would love it if people would check out my Facebook business page, which frankly, I haven't even done like an Instagram page, because I have not yet joined the newest century with that. So just check out Sarah Weandlpc on Facebook. I would love to get more likes in there, because anyway, it'd be great. But no, check me out on my website, sarahweandlpc.com. Any questions, Lauren?
No, absolutely. Before I go into plugs, I'll just say, knowing Sarah a very long time here, I think she's like the perfect blend of upbeat and pleasant, but when it's time to get down, she knows how to balance that out. So anybody who's experiencing any symptoms, and you want to check out Sarah, I heavily advise to check that out. I also, as always, tell my audience, I thank you so much for taking the time with all the podcasts in the world that you could be picking. You're checking out this one, so to subscribe, and all comments are always answered on YouTube. And other than that, I will tell everybody, as I always do, that the party is over. And what are you doing here? Get off the internet.